If you're in Seattle, and you need to buy or sell a home, we'll be right there for you. Because we're the realtors that you can trust. So go to ronanddonsitdown.com.
You're listening to The Ron and Don Show on the Ron and Don Radio Network.
Hey, you guys, what's going on? Welcome to episode 868 now, The Ron and Don Show, and thanks for listening to us on the podcast, and thanks for now watching us on YouTube.
Yeah, what is up, Ron and Don Nation?
Hey, here's the cool thing. Every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, we give you The Ron and Don Show, where we talk about news, we talk about sports, we talk about Ron, we talk about putting beef tallow on my face. How's it look?
Shiny.
Yeah. Anyway.
What happens Friday?
Yeah. And on Fridays, thank you, Matt, off the mic, we talk about real estate and real estate only. It's one segment. We get you in, we get you out. And let's talk about a deal. Sometimes we like to show you a deal. Last week, we talked about a property that we had on in South Seattle with a view of Lake Washington. This property, we had an inspection. It's an estate sale. The people that lived here on, they had passed away. It took some time for it to go through probate. If you don't understand what probate is, give us a call. We'll explain it to you. And then we jumped in and we're like, hey, let's inspect this house. We inspected the house. It's one of the first things we do. We found out, we inspected the house. My inspector, John, called out the foundation of the house. And I said, well, let me get on the phone. I'm going to call my friend Al. Al is an engineer. And Al came over and he took off his shoes. He has really smelly feet. And so he walked around the house, at the basement of the house. And that's probably why I have smelly feet, because he's always walking around homes without his shoes on. You never know what you collect. And I think he wears the same socks every day of the week. But that's another story for another day. Al knows that I love him. So anyway, he looked at this and he said, hey, this house doesn't have a foundation issue. And then he said, this is what I think it might cost to fix this. He said, I would talk to an architect. So I picked up the phone and called my friend Scotty. Scotty came over and I said, Scotty, could you come over and take a look at this? Which he did. And Scotty's helped us a lot in some of the building that we do. So we had it inspected by John. We had an engineer named Al come over. And then Scotty came over as an architect. And then I talked to a contractor. We put all these numbers together. And I'm not going to share what the numbers are, but I will say, to fix that foundation, we're still not closed on the place yet, so I'm not going to say what our numbers were. I went back to the attorney who hired us, and I said, hey, this house has a foundation issue. Usually when you have an estate sale, and you can explain this, Ron, you don't have to disclose any of that stuff, right? On an estate sale.
Well, the seller has obligations to disclose. It's called a seller disclosure form, Form 17 in the Northwest MLS, and it's there to protect buyers and sellers. And so the reason why is you, as a seller, need to disclose everything that you materially know about the property. And the word materially is important here because that means that you actually know it. It's not something that someone told you or something that you think you know or something that someone else says that they know. It's something that you know. And then that protects you because you are saying, hey, this is what I'm selling. Here's all warts and all, everything I know about the property. It protects the buyers because the buyers then can look at this, and actually if they choose to, they could use a 3-day provision on there to basically, you could get out of the deal, get your earnest money back if you reject the offer for something materially inside of that form. And so the example that they always gave in real estate school, which I thought was interesting, and this happened in Washington State, you had some sellers and their agent, they were getting a house ready to list. Right before, like a week or two before the listing was supposed to go live, the basement flooded. And so everybody was super bummed. And they're like, we can't sell this house with a flooded basement. So what they did is they ripped out the carpet real quick. They put in new carpet and they put paneling up, that wooden paneling around the outside of the basement. And then on the seller disclosure form, there's a part that says, has the basement ever flooded? And they said no. So they checked, no, there's no basement flooding that's happened in this house, sold the house. The buyers took that form and they said, cool, the basement's never flooded. And so they bought the house. They move in a month or two later, this black mold starts to grow everywhere. And they're like, there's a lot of moisture in this basement. Sure seemed like it flooded. There's a lawsuit that happened. In discovery, they find the texts and emails between the agent and the seller where all of them knew that the basement had flooded. They all collaborated on the work in that basement. And then they did not disclose that. They lost that lawsuit and they got damages, and it was a very expensive day in court for them. Had they disclosed that on the Form 17, if they had said 2 weeks ago the basement flooded, what we did is ripped out the carpet and we put in new carpet and new paneling. Had they disclosed that and just put that one line on there for when the basement had flooded, and the people still bought it, they would have had zero liability. So it's important to disclose. Now, back to your example in the question. When someone passes away, they take all their knowledge with the property with them to the grave. And so you're exempt from filling out that Form 17 because the owner of that property is no longer with us, and the entity that is selling the house is the estate of the person. It's not the person anymore. There's a status change in the seller from being the individual to the estate of the individual. The estate never lived in the house. The estate has no knowledge of the workings of the house, and so the estate is not obligated to fill that form out.
Yeah. So a lot of times when an attorney who's running the estate will contact a realtor, they'll say, well, we don't have Form 17. We don't really want to know anything about the house. Let's just sell it as is. The reason we were interested in getting an inspection, because we were interested, the estate had set some money aside. We were interested in flipping that house ourselves for the estate to see if we could take the home, because a lot of times money is left behind. We're doing one of these at Edmonds right now. Mom and dad passed away. The house was left to their son. We had it inspected. We found out we probably need to do about $100,000 worth of work to this house. Mom and dad had left the money behind to do the work to the house. So what we're doing is we're taking some of the estate money, and the son is running it, to do what a flipper would do. Let's take that $100,000, let's invest it in the house, and let's make another $100,000 or $150,000 on top of the money that we invested. Sometimes when people pass away and they don't have money that they've set aside or enough money, you can't flip the house for the estate. You can't do that. So you have to take the house to market. In this case, we're selling this house for a charity, and the attorney was contacted by the charity. And the charity said some of the money was set aside, but not enough in order to fix the foundation, because we were going to go and fix the foundation. So then what we did is we went out, we found some builders and some flippers off market, and they made some bids on the property. I went back to the attorney that was running the state. I said, that's not enough. We need to take this to market. Why did I tell him we need to take it to market versus selling it off market? Why did I do that?
Well, because we're trying to maximize the value for the sellers, and the people that are approaching you for a builder, they build in some pretty big margins.
Yeah.
And so what we thought would happen is that there's possibly more than one buyer for this property. You can have the builder population. You can also have the flippers, but it's located with water views of Lake Union.
Yeah.
So there's a really good chance that a retail buyer would also be interested in this, as long as they know the true condition of the house. And that retail buyer, because they intend to live there for 10, 15, 20 years, they can sort of amortize the cost to build that and pay a higher retail value right now, because they're not trying to get out of it in a year. They're trying to improve the property and stay in the neighborhood.
And that's what we do even for our sellers that are still with us that haven't passed. Ron and I try to go in, do heavy work, and flip the property for them. And we say, hey, if we're going to spend $1, let's get $1 back on top of that. Let's not spend money we're not going to get back, right? So a lot of times what we'll do is when we go out and see a seller, I did this the other day in Kirkland, and I give them 3 lanes. I say, hey, if all we do is clean this house and we clean the yard and we put this house on, this is what the house is going to sell for. But hey, if we go in and we lipstick this house, well, this is how much the lipstick costs, so we're going to have to invest in this. But then when we go ahead and we flip the family home, This is how much money we think we'll make, because this is how much money a flipper would make if they bought the house and did the work themselves. And then what if we went in and did some deep work? And I mean, what if we started ripping out kitchens and bathrooms? What if we started ripping out and ripping down chandeliers? What if we went in the yard instead of doing hundreds of dollars worth of work to clear the yard? What if we went in there and spent thousands, did some replanting and all? You would want to do that in Kirkland, right? Because the house that we were looking at over there, that's like a $3 million property. So you'd want to do that if you had the money to do it. So back to this house, South Seattle, and it was Lake Washington, not Lake Union. So we're looking at the property and we're saying, well, we know what people will pay off market, but if we take it to market and people compete, let's see what people will compete, and we'll disclose that there is a foundation issue, and we'll invite them to bring in an architect, an engineer, an inspector before they even write on the deal, which is very unusual, but that's very transparent. And Ron and I always like being transparent. So we encourage the attorney and the charity, let's be transparent. And I still think by doing this, we'll get $100,000, $150,000 more for the property than if we sold this off market to a builder or a flipper. So that's what we did. We brought it on. We told everyone, hey, come see it. We didn't even broom clean it. While we were doing the open house, we trimmed the yard during the open house, and I did that on purpose. And the reason being, I wanted people to see that it was a fixer. I didn't want someone, a retail buyer, buying that house in the neighborhood, getting in way over their head, not knowing what they were doing. I wanted to make sure that somebody bought that house that understood what they were getting into, had the ability to fix it, and then the ability to either live in it or turn around and sell it, right? So they're going to have to spend some hard-earned money in order to fix that foundation. People would ask me, what's wrong with the foundation and how much will it take to fix? I knew that because I had done the due diligence, seeing if we wanted to fix it. But I didn't tell them that. Why didn't I tell them that?
Well, because you're not obligated to disclose a bid, because bids can change by the vendor and bids change over time. So in other words, if and we didn't get written bids, you just had some conversations with people. You were doing due diligence. So the disclosure is there's a foundation issue. You can get it inspected yourself, generate your own bid, because we're not responsible for the work.
Right.
We're not doing the work for a buyer. We're working for the seller.
Yeah.
And so we fulfilled our obligations to disclose the issue, but we didn't produce work product to actually do the fix.
These aren't I stood in the driveway, I met everyone, and I said, hey, I'm the realtor here, and even though I do a lot of rehab work and I know what it would cost to fix that foundation, I want you to talk to somebody so you know, because that number may be different. I said, what I don't want to have happen is you buy this house, and I'll just make up some numbers here. And let's say I thought it was going to be $40,000 to fix the foundation. And then you started ripping out some of the walls, and you went, wow, it's not $40,000, it's $140,000. But the realtor stood in the driveway and told me it was only $40,000. Now they're coming back at you, and you've opened yourself up, right? So I'm not the rehabber. I'm not the engineer. I'm not the architect. I'm the realtor standing in the driveway representing this home. And I'm giving you plenty of opportunity to bring in other experts to tell you what's going on and what's happening with this property. So we ended up, I had an open house. There was almost 75 people at the open house. We had, I think, probably 45 private parties go through. Ron had an open house. Hundreds of people ended up going through this open house. I think we ended up getting over a dozen bids on this property. We would have got more, but we had a lot of people calling us and saying, hey, I'm going to write a check. I'll write you cash for what you guys are asking. And we told them not to write. Why did we do that?
Well, because they didn't have a chance. I'd already had an escalated offer in hand, and so we don't like to waste a bunch of people's time.
Yeah. Other realtors would do that, though, because they want to get 20 or 30 offers, because they want to spike a football in the neighborhood and say, hey, I got 30 offers on this house. Well, you knew that there were people that weren't going to be able to buy that house because you knew it was going to escalate. And they went around. I hate when you sit there and you jump through a bunch of hoops for another realtor, for their ego and for that mailer they're going to send out when they know you don't have a chance, so they can notch one more on their belt and say, hey, we got a buyer here. So anyway, we ended up selling that house list for what were we, about $100,000 over list, I think, on the house?
It was pretty close to that, yeah.
Yeah. So it really is the best outcome. We didn't spend any money other than hanging the sign and cleaning up the yard so people could see the yard and advertising it. We didn't stage it. The photographs, we usually do like 5 different types of photos, from drones to making sure that we Matterport the inside of the house. We do all kinds of cool photography. We didn't do any of that because we wanted to make sure, again, that we attracted someone that's a builder, flipper, engineer, architect, even a home rehabber. We wanted to make sure that they understood what they were getting themselves in, because we didn't want them coming back to us or the attorney or the charity and saying, hey, you didn't disclose this to us. So we disclosed a lot of things that we didn't need to. And I think a lot of times that transparency is rather helpful. But just be careful out there. If you're buying a fixer, you guys, make sure there's an opportunity to have that fixer inspected, because it's an easy way to go upside down on a property and lose hundreds of thousands of dollars.
My final thing on this is, if you're a buyer and you look at a Form 17 for a house that was built in 1950 and that seller says, nothing wrong.
Yeah.
0 things wrong with this house. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this house.
Their pants are on fire.
Then I would be very suspicious of that report, and I would 100% of the time get my own inspection, because that person is not being truthful.
Yeah. Whoever bought that house, though, whether they do the work on the foundation, it's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I would add 2 other bedrooms to it. Someone's going to make a lot of money on that house.
It's an incredible opportunity.
Someone's going to make a lot of money on that house, whether they live in it or sell it. That would be the kind of house that I would want to bid on and I would want to buy, with that kind of view. There's an alley. You could build a second home. There's all kinds of cool things that you could do with that property. That's what we do at Ron and Don Real Estate. So if you need us, reach out. If you're buying, selling, investing, don't go it alone. You need a partner. And also make sure, if you're hiring a realtor, ask them, how many deals have you done this year? How many deals have you done in the last 5 years? How many investors have you worked with? How many sellers? How many buyers? Can I speak with them? A lot of times people just think because you have a family member as a real estate agent, I'm going to go ahead and hire them. And we run into that a lot, where there's realtors that are, there's a lot of people in our profession that are very incompetent, and we are not incompetent, right? In fact, we have shirts that say, we are not that incompetent.
And we even spelled them right.
Hey, you guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the Ron and Don Show.
Yeah, we would love to be your brokers. Let's do a Ron and Don sit down. Go to ronanddonsitdown.com or email me directly, ron@ronanddon.com. I can get you all set up.
Yeah. We sell the sound. When you need us, just reach out. ronanddonsitdown.com. Till next time, you've been listening to the Ron and Don Show. Ole! Yep, we're still here. Pregnant pause, other than broadcast school. I never went to broadcast school. On the Ron and Don Radio Network.
Well, that's it. Show's over. We'll see you next time on the Ron and Don Radio Network.